Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber,
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
and we're here to entertain you with all things sustainable energy and alternative energy sources. And as always, we appreciate your questions. Feel free to ask them. We've got a number of different platforms that we're streaming on. Let us know where you're from. That's always fascinating. I think in the last podcast we counted over half a dozen different countries.
Oh, yeah, from all over the world.
Mm-hmm. And it's always fun for our audience to see where other viewers are coming in from. Um, and so we've got some news items for you today. The image behind us is a sunset image in Phoenix at the Tapatio Cliffs. It's a resort, now a five-star Hilton resort. And there's a restaurant up on this hill here, a little switchback going up there. It's a great place to take pictures of cars as we get them either for sale or just fun photography. But anyway, there's the sun is going down. It's illuminating a portion of a restaurant that's up there called The Point in Time. And we thought that might be a nice background for us here today. That looks like a bougainvillea in the front there, nice and red.
I think so. I think so. You know, it's always fascinating to me. You find that Phoenix is not unique. There are these little pockets inside of cities that look absolutely stunning, beautiful countryside. This looks like a part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And this is sitting not far from Midtown Phoenix.
Yeah. You know, one of the things my wife and I like to do, Phoenix, of course, has a lot of desert landscape, and it makes more sense. It's very efficient. You don't need as much water. And, of course, the cactus just thrive here. So they usually have a like an ornamental rock base and then cactus sprinkled throughout their front yards. And that's the predominant way of doing landscaping. But on Central Avenue, which, by the way, used to be horse farms, and my mother worked for the woman many years ago that owned literally hundreds of acres on Central Avenue. They came from Virginia.
Okay.
They were horse people. And what you see there is a lot of like irrigation canals and trees. And if you want to see the trees turning in Phoenix, that's the place to go is North Central. And there's about a 5-mile stretch where you can actually see the leaves turning each fall and each fall, basically.
It's a beautiful neighborhood up in North Central Phoenix. I agree with you totally. That's one of the most beautiful places there. In the late 80s, I lived in a place just off of 7th Avenue, just at the north end of that area. And there was even there irrigation canals still for all the lawns and the big trees and the beautiful homes.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite spot in the entire Phoenix metro area.
I can only imagine what those properties sold for decades later. It was her father that came here at the turn of the last century, and Myrtle was in her 90s by the time my mother was taking care of her here in Phoenix. But they had slowly sold all that land, and she was extremely wealthy.
Oh, I'm sure
as a
she
result of
was.
that.
I'm sure she was. That's probably one of the most expensive areas in town.
So that's what the picture is about behind us. For those of you on TikTok, I know you're seeing green screen, and we lament that fact. We would love to have our streaming service finally give our TikTok audience the full experience. But if you want to see it, you can go to YouTube, and you can see the picture that's behind us on the green screen. Question from TikTok, Doc Holiday 99999. Welcome. He says, question, could I upgrade my battery on my Model 3 to a battery that has more range? On the Model S, that's not uncommon. You can go from that anemic 40 kW battery pack all the way up to 90, which, of course, would give you a lot more range. On the Model 3, I'm not sure how to do that because, again, we're a out-of-warranty repair organization, and we don't see a lot of the newer vehicles when they're under warranty.
That's right. The Model 3s are not going to be coming off a warranty until the end of 2024. At that point in time, I'm sure we're going to start seeing a lot more of them. My conjecture is probably this could be done. I'm going to give a shout out to our trusty producers back here, Richard and Aaron, and see if they can look this up for us and see what they may be able to find.
Good project for you guys. The other thing about that is it may not be cost effective. By the time you get done with a Model S, for example, upgrade, you're talking about a $22,000 battery replacement, and if it's a Model S out of warranty, the car's worth 25 to 30. So it's a tough thing to cost justify. And unless you're very attached to that particular Model 3, it's probably more cost effective for you to just simply buy another Model 3.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. If you look at the prices on the Model 3s today, the standard range versus extended range Model 3s are not that much difference in price. The cost of the battery pack would be more than the price difference of the cars.
It looks like we've got a TikTok question. ZBD Beatbox, welcome. He says gasoline-powered lawnmowers and landscaping tools produce more emissions than gasoline vehicles. I would agree with that.
Oh, I totally agree with that. That's a few years back as the, DeWalt came out and now Craftsman has come out, and there are a number of places that are coming out with battery-powered lawnmowers and weed eaters and hedge trimmers and stuff like that. I love them.
Yeah.
They're quieter. They don't stink and smoke nearly, at all. And they're just as reliable. In fact, I think they're a lot easier to start. Even here in Phoenix, we're kind of lucky. We have the basically 12-month around lawn for those people that have lawns. But I remember living up north in northern Idaho. Try to start up the lawnmower after it's been sitting all fall and winter.
Yeah.
That is always an adventure and not a good one.
Or the lawn trimmers and the chainsaws, two-stroke engines basically, where you mix oil with the gas. And, none of those small fossil fuel burners have catalytic converters to control some of the emissions. So,
Yeah.
I could see where that would be a true statement that, what's funny about that is the T0, which we have in our service center. In 1997, there were 3 cars made, electric sports cars, and the goal, of course, was to go emission-free transportation. Well, they achieved that until they ran out of battery juice, and the original lead-acid batteries were 80 miles. So they actually had a trailer hitch on the T0 with a Honda generator, a 2-stroke engine that they were towing behind it. And when you ran out of juice, you basically fired up that generator, and of course you wiped out all of your, emission-free transportation gains at that point by having this generator behind you, continuing to power the car so you could get back home.
I was reading Ingemar Anderson's book about the future of EVs earlier this week. We're going to have Ingemar on Thursday. And he mentioned something in the book that I thought was fascinating. That whole concept of a motor to generate electricity to run an electric motor. There are still cars made today that have that essential build.
And we call them hybrids.
Yeah, we call them hybrids.
Right.
And so some hybrids, that literally is what's happening, is that there is a small gasoline engine that's doing nothing more than producing electricity to dump into a battery pack that then goes to power our electric motor.
TikTok, SER, and about 15 numbers. He says, my autopilot gets a hell of a lot closer to other cars on a turn on the highways. It holds its lane, but about to clip the car next to me. Okay, so you're having autopilot problems. All right, I think I get the comment. Are you guys typing that correctly? Or is it just not coming through well?
No, that was typed as it was written.
Okay.
I've been trying autopilot on a 2018 Tesla recently, and I'm driving down the freeway. I'm in the carpool lane because here in Arizona, you get these little nice blue license plates with the clouds on them, and it's all pretty. And minding my own business, there's a semi-tractor trailer 2 lanes over. He's going a little slower than me, but no big deal. There's no other traffic around. And my car slams on the brakes. I was going 75 miles an hour, and within a couple seconds, I'm going 60, which is what the truck was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that this is not just me. It's kind of a thing with some of the firmware going on with the autopilots. Tesla's working on it. I'm sure that they're going to get it corrected. But on that autopilot, there's a distance dial on your cruise control
On the settings.
on the
Yeah.
handle. It's a setting where you can have one car distance up to 7 cars distant. And I think playing with that setting, I had it all the way up at 7, and I think I had made it too sensitive. That could be that SCR has his set all the way down at number 1, which means he's keeping only one car width between him and the next person.
That's
And
interesting.
that might cause something like that to happen.
And Mark, you were saying that that it might be based on location as well, because it's the same spot where that continues to happen for you, correct? So
It is. I for me, it happens when I'm driving around the south side of South Mountain. I live in the southern area of Phoenix, and there's a freeway that goes around the south end of that mountain over to Chandler, and that we kind of do life over there because our area is kind of new. Very few restaurants are shopping, and it's along that stretch that it tends to happen. Elsewhere, not a problem,
Interesting. Sounds like a GPS glitch or something.
and it might be.
Interesting. Yep. All right. Well, I've got a news item for you guys. Tesla surpasses 4 million global sales, 4 million vehicles. And they actually reached this milestone faster than they had predicted. So that's a good thing. And Elon reinforced that Tesla's mission is for sustainable electrified economy, even at the cost of profits. And we had suspected that it wasn't all about profits with Tesla, as it is with most companies, actually. So they were able to achieve this exponential growth despite COVID and chip shortages, lots of supply chain problems for many of these manufacturers. The article also says that Tesla sales increased 11 of the past 12 quarters with only one decline due to the pandemic onset. So that's pretty impressive. The Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, of course, lead Tesla's sales, with the Model Y becoming the top vehicle in sales growth and overtaking the Model 3 in key markets like Europe and China. So Tesla continues to aim for 50% production growth year over year, potentially becoming a top global automaker within the next few years.
I am really impressed by these numbers, especially the 11 out of 12 quarters growth. So many automakers have had supply chain issues that have, left their car lots empty, looking like empty parking lots on a Saturday night. The fact that Tesla has been able to continue its growth, continue either reaching or getting close to that 50% year over year growth, is remarkable, but not necessarily 100% surprising.
Yeah.
50% growth, I think, is going to be unsustainable long term, but short term, EV sales are still a very small percentage of the overall auto market. And I think that there's room for a highly competitive company like Tesla to grow in this type of manner.
Yeah.
I look at China as an example. In 1978, China was this little backwater nation. They started economic reforms. They had a huge population, but no GDP to speak of. Since 1978, they've averaged 9% per year of GDP growth, which is
Amazing. Yeah.
amazing and definitely will be unsustainable forever. But they came from such a small place compared to the world market that there was room for them to grow. And I think the same thing's happening with Tesla. They're coming from the EV market is still so small that I think there's a lot of room for Tesla to grow for the next few years at least.
We tend to forget, but the whole EV adoption rate caught everyone by surprise, including Tesla.
Yeah.
Back during the Roadster days, no one envisioned that the whole world would be adopting EVs at the pace and the rate that it is now. And a good example of that was, look at all of the other auto OEMs that were ignoring EVs, basically saying this is a flash in the pan, it's not going to last. We're going to continue to focus on ICE vehicles. That's where the market is. And boy, are they paying the price for that miscalculation now.
Oh, they totally are. This, doesn't this remind you a little bit, if you go back again about 40 years to IBM and the IBM executives saying, yeah, this little personal computer thing, maybe we'll sell 4,000 or 5,000 of those.
Yeah.
over its entire lifetime.
Of course, one of the most famous quotes in the computer world was by Ken Olsen, the founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, where I worked for almost 10 years, who at one point was quoted as saying, "Why would anybody want a personal computer in their home?"
Yeah. Why would anybody want to drive an electric vehicle?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same type of thing. On TikTok, ZBD Beatbox, first, thank you very much for following us. He asks, how many years until all commercial trucking is fully self-driving?
You know, it's tough for us to partake in predictions because, as we just mentioned, we were all blindsided by the rapid rate of adoption.
Yeah.
You know, electric semis make a lot of sense, and anything that makes that much sense will accelerate. The early reports we're getting, by the way, from the Tesla semi drivers, they love these things. Not just the performance and the 0 to 60 times, but the comfort of the cabin. I think you were talking about that in the last podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We had some pictures up there.
Yeah, the Tesla semi driver, he didn't have a lot of training, but had gone through. He was driving for PepsiCo. We were able to see a couple of pictures. You look at our last podcast, you can see some pictures of the inside of the cabin. It's for a semi tractor trailer, is actually very spacious. I've ridden in the cabs of those tractor trailers before.
I got it up there.
Yes, thank you. That's actually very spacious. And then behind that, there's a jump seat as well. Great visibility. I think the oddest thing about it is that picture and that steering wheel are exactly in the center.
Yeah.
And that would take a little bit of getting used to. Other than that, I think they like it.
And that was a real shift from what we were used to. I think later in the segment, we're going to talk about left-hand and right-hand drive cars.
Oh, yes.
You know, the silliness of making two types. A center version looks like it could make a lot more sense. Now,
It really
could you
does.
do that with a car? Now, think about that. You know, could you put 3 people in the front and the driver's in the center, basically?
You could.
Yeah, you could get
You
away with that,
definitely
maybe.
could. That's
See this one now that you could have a bench seat behind there, kind of, maybe.
That's the jump seat. Yeah, that was my first comment about the semi. I said, well, it looks like we've got a final nail in the coffin for hitchhiking, which, of course, occurred in the last century. But here, you know, it looks like the semi could pick up a hitchhiker again.
I think it could. And, you know, it's go old style, bench seat across the front. You could have 3 adults across the front, the driver in the middle very easily.
Amazing. So it looks like we've got a comment from YouTube, Paul Bodybuilder. Welcome back, Paul. He says, love you guys. We love you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
TikTok, Golden Fluffalo, not Buffalo, Golden Fluffalo says, so cool you're doing this. Well, thank you. We're having fun with this.
Yeah, this is I like to tell the guys afterwards, this is just a kick in the pants to do. This is a lot of fun. Thank you. On YouTube, Micah was here. Off topic, but notice that you've been thinking about options on how to operate new Tesla batteries with the gel. Have you tried laser cleaners that could evaporate it with the right setting, not plastic? I think he's talking about the 4680 batteries that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, it's that pink potting compound, for lack of a better word at this point. You know, we have not seen one in the service center yet, but Sandy Monroe was able to share with us some of their best practices regarding the pack that they took apart. And they fooled around with chemicals for a while and then realized that they were highly carcinogenic, so they put that aside. And expensive. He didn't say how big, but he said we got a little vial of that chemical, and it cost us $300 to $400. So it could be dissolved, but he said that the most success they had was, again, with a dry ice blasting method. And I was unfamiliar with this until we researched it, but apparently dry ice blasting definitely has some advantages. It's a lot more gentle than abrasive sand type blasting, kind of like soda blasting, which we have used before. And they found the best success was using that method. The laser method would also be intriguing. We would be generating some heat there, and but it'll be fun. I think once we get a pack in our service center and it has a problem, we're going to enjoy doing what we do best, which is reverse engineering, solving problems, and finding ways to repair it.
I definitely think so. And I like you, the only concern I would have potentially would be the heat that the laser might generate, because these batteries tend to be pretty heat sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a company that is in China, and it's called Hi-Fi, and not like you think, H-I-F-I. It's H-I-P-H-I. And they announced a right-hand drive electric car for 2026. Now, the market that they're going after here is going to be UK, and this article, or at least my abbreviated version, doesn't mention it, but UK and Australia. We forget that there are places on the planet that are driving on the wrong side of the road. I don't mind
Yes.
saying that.
Yes.
We're used to left-hand driving here. So they will have product between 2024 and 2025. It was a former Jaguar Land Rover engineer, Mark Stanton, who now serves as Hi-Fi's chief CTO, basically, chief technical officer. And he said they're going to launch this car in Europe, targeting the Tesla Model X and Porsche Taycan. And, of course, Australia. They have a working version of this at the Shanghai Motor Show. By the way, any of you that had an opportunity to visit, and is it still going on, do you know?
I don't know. I think it's over, but was going on most of last week.
Yeah, would love to hear from you what your thoughts were if you were there. These things are always fun to attend. So we've got some right-hand wheel vehicles coming out, and boy, I would love it if they would just standardize and say, look, there's some standardization going to go on here. We're going to have one charging connector and method. We're all going to go metric.
Yep.
And we're all going to drive on a left-hand side of the road.
Yep. Or yes, and or on the right-hand side of the road. Either one.
I was telling Mark, we fly into UK when we go to Europe, and I remember taking a shuttle bus at London Heathrow to a different location. And I was like 20 hours jet lagged, and it spooked the heck out of me every once in a while. I was sitting toward the front of the bus. He was driving on the wrong side of the road, and I thought for sure we're going to get in a head-on collision at any point. But it didn't seem to happen, so it must work for them.
I guess it works for them. I'm always confused about how somebody transitions from England to France or back and forth, because England, the driver's, it's on the right-hand side, the driver's steering wheel, and you drive on the left side of the road. France is the opposite. Just the idea of having that driver's space sitting on right next to the sidewalk as you're driving down the road, that just freaks me out. And
a thought just occurred to me. We took the channel from UK to France.
Okay.
And what do they do inside the tunnel? At some point, do they switch lanes for you so that you come out on the right lane when you get into France?
It has to be. I don't know. But I think it has to be. My take on this really is that this is a good move. First, of course, you have somebody from Britain who's heading up the technology, so that makes some inherent sense. He's used to the idea of people driving on the wrong side of the road. But even better than that, I was surprised to learn 25% of the world drives their cars on the left-hand side of the road with a steering wheel on the right-hand side of the car. I didn't know it was anywhere near that high.
Amazing, yeah.
And so most of the EV automakers right now are making their EVs for the other 75% of the world. In fact, I would dare say that more than 75% of the EV models that are out there are only left-hand drive electric vehicles. So to go into a space that's under-occupied, to me, seems like a move that is inherently smart and would make sense.
Sure. And we all know why, of course, they're not switching. There's so much infrastructure that's been evolved over many, many decades.
Oh, yeah.
Road signs, all of it. It's probably not feasible to do that anymore, but we all have a chance to do things right the first time, and that was one I think that we missed.
I think so. Just like the U.S. going to the metric system, eventually maybe it'll occur. I don't know.
We're still using the King's English system, where his foot size is.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
All right, have some more questions here. It looks like LinkedIn. Welcome, LinkedIn. Asha Venugopal. He says, always new and innovative. Well, thank you for the comment. We appreciate it. TikTok, Golden Fluffalo, he says, are you on a podcast now? Yes, we are live right now. We've got another half hour or so to go.
Yes, and this podcast, once we're done here, will go out to Spotify, so you can always stream it there, and you can continue to stream this or watch it again on the channels that we're on, YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and on TikTok, among others.
And Trucker Alistair is joining us again from YouTube. Welcome back, Trucker. And his question is related to the semi. Of course, with a first name like Trucker, I would understand why.
I totally understand.
He says, hello, you guys again. But the only thing that troubles me is, how can you reverse the semi without having two blind spots? In my truck, I look out the windows in tight spots.
Trucker, that's a great point. I'm wondering, and I bet, but I don't know for sure, that those two screens that you see, one on either side, have cameras associated with them so that the truck driver can see. Because that is a great point, that if you're sitting right in the center of the cab like that, it's too far of a stretch to go out and look outside either window. And I myself, if I'm backing up a trailer, I will frequently turn my head and look out the window to the side of the trailer to see where it's at exactly.
You know, this is reminiscent of me learning to drive my Model S. And I was used to old school analog methods like this. You know, you look out the window to make sure. And I never trusted that backup screen. And I finally got to the point where I realized this thing hasn't failed me yet. And today, I really do trust that screen more than I do my own vision. So,
you know, I agree with you there. I love the backup screen.
Well, they give you lines too, guidelines.
They give you the guidelines. It's nice and clear. It's easy to use.
And the proximity sensors too. They'll beep at you if there's an obstruction that you're not paying attention to or don't see. So,
In fact, the Volvo that my wife and I bought this last fall, if you get too close to something, it will apply the brakes and stop for you.
Okay.
And nothing quite like that. Yes.
So the Tesla Semi does have cameras. So like my screens right here that I have, on the edge of them, in the center, you can actually see the cameras as you're driving down and as you're backing up.
Oh, really?
And if you pull up a picture on the internet with the Tesla side mirrors, you can see the cameras that point into the blind spot. So you know how you always see those bumper stickers that says, if you can't see me in the mirrors, I can't see you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, these cameras are positioned in those blind spots so the driver can actually see who's on the side of their vehicles.
Yeah. It's going to be hard for our generation to trust technology, and probably have to have a generation go, before there's 100% trust in those things. But I'm warming up to the notion of using my backup, capability in the Tesla Model S's or any of the Teslas.
On YouTube, Maiko is here. Says, in EU, EVs won't pass inspection if there's any damage to the battery pack. Lots of EVs have the pack as a first point of contact. There are cases where a bump on the road has caused damage, and that damage means the battery has to be replaced. Any thoughts?
Well, we've actually seen the type of damage that is being described here. A small puncture, for example. It was probably 1/4 of an inch or so in the aluminum tub. And the insurance company was ready to total the car. It was an older Model S. And what we pointed out to the customer is, look, we can close that gap. It's important for you to describe to us when the accident occurred. Was there standing water? Did you drive through a gigantic puddle shortly thereafter? And he said, no, it's Phoenix. It was nice and dry. It was hot. There was no water involved at all. So in that particular case, we actually closed off that 1/4 inch puncture in the tub, and he's, happily driving his car. I understand that there's some risk management here that has to be applied, and the insurance companies are going to err on the side of caution every single time because of the huge liability that they incur if they weigh in the other direction.
Yes.
But you have another element that comes into play, which is common sense. Sometimes the damage is merely a dimple in the tub. And we know enough about the tubs themselves that we understand where the components are, where the battery modules are. And there was another case where it was toward the penthouse in the front. And underneath where that dimple was, there were no components, no wiring harnesses. It was basically an empty cavity at that point. So again, we advise the customer it's okay to drive. But it is a concern, and I'm glad you pointed it out. The insurance companies will definitely side on the air, or they will err on the side of caution.
Sure, that makes sense. Trucker Alistair on YouTube says, no, not exactly. Only Germany trains drive like on the road, but all over Europe, drive on left with the driver on the right is just like in England. What is your experience on the driving on the left versus driving on the right?
Well, the areas I'm familiar with in Germany are all left-hand drive cars. And the trains, however, I don't know. I don't know where the conductor sits.
That's a good
Passengers,
question. I don't know.
they sit on both sides, but it seems to me that, and there are a lot of electric trains in Germany, by the way. That's the most popular, method of train transportation. It seemed to me that they were in the center. I don't know, Trucker. I'm going to be there in July. I'll let you know. How's that?
Yeah, my only experience of driving in Europe was driving in Italy. I will leave the driving in Europe to the European drivers after that experience.
To the experts, yeah.
They are. It was something I'll never forget. That's probably the best way to say it. It was generally positive, but I do know also in Italy, your steering wheel's on the left-hand side of the car. You drive on the right-hand side of the road, just like here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have experience outside of that.
So YouTube Trucker again says, well, if someone can drive the semi, I'd like to drive one too before kicking the bucket. That sounds like a worthwhile goal.
Agreed.
I think what I would enjoy doing is actually doing a 0 to 60 launch with a full payload to prove that this thing can do what trucks have never done before.
That would be beyond amazing. There's a hill in Idaho that I would love to see and drive a Tesla Semi on. As you're headed south on US Highway 95, coming into the town of Lewiston, which is right on the Columbia River, there is about a 15-mile hill, and it's famous in the region for how dangerous it is and how many trucks have lost brakes and so on and so forth. I'd like to take a Tesla Semi up that hill fully loaded and watch it pass not only semis, but pass passenger cars and pickups that are hauling trailers and stuff like that. I think that would just be mind-blowing to a lot of people.
That would be fun. Yeah. Well, another news item. SpaceX announces a new facility in Bastrop, Texas. The facility is going to be used for Starlink hardware production. And I keep forgetting that Starlink is really more part of SpaceX than, Tesla or
Sure.
any of these other Elon Musk companies. Now, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Bastrop? Anyway, I'm just going to call it
sure.
the Bastrop for now. It's located near Austin in the greater Austin metropolitan area, and they're beginning to hire for various positions there. It is ideally located, they say, this new facility for the Starlink production, 24 and a half miles away from Tesla headquarters at Gigafactory Austin. And it is also, excuse me just a moment, I had sworn I had silenced this. And so my social media team doesn't get angry, I'm going to take my phone off the table because it vibrates through the table. And one of our guys over there is really not annoyed when that happens. It's on the floor now, Jesse. All right. So where was I? Yes. So apparently they're going to connect this with Tesla's or with Elon's Boring Company. And if you guys could throw up some pictures there. We've got the first one I wanted to do was the one with text on it. And that's the one that says that Proof Rock returns home. Apparently that's what they call this gigantic earth drill. and it's pretty cool. There's some people standing next to it. You get a sense of scale here.
Hey, you gotta talk into your microphone.
All right.
So Prufrock returns home. Okay.
After completing another Bass Strip tunnel, great job by the TBC team. What is TBC? The Boring Company. Okay, good acronym. Now, Elon hates acronyms, but he may approve of that one. And anyway, there's another picture, guys, where it shows how this thing actually tunnels under the ground, and it's that pictorial image that we posted on our image folder.
You know, while that image is coming up, a thought for you. Back in, what was it, 2017, I think, Hurricane Harvey hit the Houston area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something like 51 or 52 inches of rain over the course of 48 hours. I mean, we picked up some Model S's and repaired them from that flooding. So what would happen to one of these boring tunnels?
Well, I
if
have an
there's
answer
52
there.
inches?
I have an answer there. In Phoenix, we have what's called the Deck Park Tunnel,
Yep.
which is downtown, and it's fairly long, probably about 1/8 of a mile or so. And in the very lowest portion of that are a couple of 6-foot steel doors, and down below that is equipment, pumps. And what these do when there's heavy rain, they essentially pump that water. I'm not sure where they pump it, but it pumps out of there rapidly so the traffic can continue to flow. And the reason I know that is we were contracted to provide the backup power systems for those pumps, UPSs.
Okay.
And we had a heck of a time getting them down in there. We had to have rigging equipment, a mini crane. You know, these are fairly heavy boxes, 6 or 7 feet tall, full of 5,000 pounds of batteries and all that. And it was our electrical team that actually installed these down in there. So I would imagine that when they build these boring tunnels, that they have provisions for water elimination or removal. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, to me that is just it's fascinating. The permitting process with the city, I think that would be a little bit of an adventure, I think. But so we're talking about a potential of a 24-mile long tunnel, then, correct?
24-mile long tunnel is that's what the article alludes to. What fascinates me is this gigantic drill. You're going to have different types of material that you're going through. Sand, of course, being the simplest. But what do you do when you hit bedrock? You know, is this thing actually able to grind its way through bedrock? And, you know, I guess in Europe you have other problems, such as archaeological digs that eventually reveal that, oh my God, this was a Roman Colosseum beneath the ground, and we need to now stop boring because we need to spend years now to retrieve all of the artifacts that will get destroyed by boring. There we go. We've got some scale here. Now, in Las Vegas, there at the CES show, a number of people that attended went through the boring tunnel between the Las Vegas Convention Center. And it looks to me like they actually have 2 of these or 2 tunnels, because if you see the guy standing there, that's about enough for 1 car.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go bi-directional, again, left-hand, right-hand drive, either one of those, I guess, would apply.
Yes, it would.
You know, Elon would have had a field day during the tunnel construction. Now there, it made it even more dicey. They had to go underwater.
Yeah.
Not just through dirt.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just seems like that's a whole nother engineering challenge, is trying to keep the water out as you're tunneling under the lake, or in this case, the Black Sea. No,
English Channel.
The English Channel, right. Very cool. So anyway, that is coming. In the article, it also quotes Elon, and he says, SpaceX was founded under the belief that a future where humanity is out exploring the stars is fundamentally more exciting than one where we are not. So I threw that in there since it was a
I think that's
SpaceX
a
thing.
great quote. I think, you know, I mean, take a look at what happened with all the televisions and the Starship, and to me, that Starship was actually quite a success. I know that it didn't reach total, orbit. They had to abort the flight partway in,
I
but
was just about to talk about that. If we should mention that launch.
Yeah, there were people, lamenting the fact that it didn't make it, and but the Elon team was rejoicing. They apparently learned a lot from that, and it met a number of design milestones, and it almost appeared that they weren't expecting it to succeed.
I think that is the case. If you take a look back a couple of years at some of their other, some of their other rockets that they've put out, these things were blowing up on the launch pad or not firing at all. And what they said after each one is the kind of attitude that I wish I could see in every company. Well, it didn't work this time, but we've got lots of stuff we can learn, so it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they learn, and the next time is better, and the next time is better. That's one of the things that keeps me bullish on Tesla overall, is that type of attitude, that type of open or growth mindset,
Right.
is something that I wish more companies would have.
It reminds me of Thomas Alva Edison when asked about all his failures with the light bulb before he, succeeded. Well, he says, now I know over 1,000 ways that it won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll find the way that it does. So Trucker Alistair is talking to us on YouTube again. He said that the train drives on the right side of the tracks, but when the trains drive the Belgium, they switch tracks at the border. He has 9 years of commuting in Germany trains. And our friends from the Bion Danish Genome Institute, they are over in Europe, have also chimed in, and they say Alistair is right about the trains.
Thank you guys for chiming in.
Thank you so much.
TikTok, iHend71 or Lhend71. He says, pretty soon humans will not be able to think for themselves. Sad face. It will be fun for you, but not for truck drivers. Okay.
There's a point there. Growing up, you had to take math tests.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take
without a
math tests,
calculator.
and you had to not use a calculator. That's right. And the reason the teacher gave was, if you only learn how to use the calculator, you'll be lost when you don't have one.
Right.
There's a point there that, with all of the AI and everything happening, eventually there will be some humans that think for themselves, but most humans that don't have to won't.
Yeah, there'll be so many skills that we will not be necessary anymore. Handwriting, for example, it'll go the way that typewriters did. By the way, when I said no calculators, we're talking about going to school in the 60s. There were no calculators invented yet.
That's true. That would be slide rules at that point.
Right. And even those we couldn't bring in, and those were a bear to use. They were not simple.
My father gave me a slide rule, his slide rule that he used in the early 60s when he was doing engineering and stuff. I'll have to show it to you sometime. I have it here at the office.
Very cool.
By the way, we have a couple videos on AI coming soon.
Okay. All right.
I'm just announcing that to our audience.
It is a deviation for us a bit, but we agonized, we spoke about it, and we said, you know what? We're a high-tech company. And then it reminded me that for 40 years now, we have evolved high-tech type companies.
Yeah.
So it's consistent with our trajectory and our path. And we will be introducing more AI into some of our presentations, and we hope you guys enjoy it.
Well, when you think about the full self-driving and autopilot and so many other automatic features going into the cars, AI is already a part of our life. It's only going to get bigger.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. We have a graph that I wanted to pop up, guys. It's the world's top 10 best-selling battery electric vehicle makers in 2022. And no surprise there, but look who's number one. And look at the number of units sold. And then you can see how it shakes up. It looks like China's coming up to speed fairly quickly. And the article here says that 5 of the 10 largest BEV sellers are Chinese. So, and of course, Tesla could be considered partially Chinese as well, considering that their Shanghai factory cranks out a number of EVs as well.
That's right. A lot of Tesla's Chinese sales come from Shanghai. A lot of Tesla's European sales come from the Giga Berlin factory. And then a lot of the U.S. sales come from the U.S. gigafactories. I'm impressed. A year ago, I had never even heard of BYD. Didn't even know that they existed, and
Yeah.
yet now they continue to make the news. Looks like they have great vehicles overall, and they're very popular.
Coming out with some great product and continuing to innovate. YouTube, PYGKLB, welcome. He says the Boring Company tunnels are one way. Cars drive in a loop. I tried to get a drive when I was in Las Vegas, but it only runs when there are big conventions that take up more than one of the 3 halls. Well, that's good to know.
Definitely good to know. On TikTok, Lhen71, another comment that says, just like the episode of Twilight Zone, look how that turned out scary. I said, I'm going to go off to the grid to ground myself.
Good strategy. All right. So I have a video. If you guys can pop that up. It's in the text file under the images folder. It's a YouTube video. And I thought what we could do is spend a little time talking about in-wheel motors again. It was a very popular topic in one of our earlier podcasts. And what we're going to show you here is a manufacturer who is innovating with in-wheel motors, Hyundai of all companies. And, it's a short clip, probably about a half a minute or so, but I looked at this and I said, look at the capabilities here. These wheels are actually able to turn themselves a full 90 degrees. Now, if you have all 4 wheels turn 90 degrees, think about what happens to parallel parking. You no longer have to do that angle back and forth thing.
Oh, yeah.
You're sitting there and you can get into a space that has just inches behind you and in front of you. You just have to make sure that the guys in front and behind you also have this capability, right?
You got to stay on your mic.
All right.
We're losing you there.
So, if we can bring up that video, it's going to show the vehicle doing crab driving. That is just too cool, that upper section right there. And zip, he's in a parallel parking spot.
Now, I know this may be complex, but how do we not already have this? We've had wheels on cars for 100 years. We're just now figuring out how to do this.
It's the mechanical constraints of using a U-joint. And what you would have to do in order to achieve this with a traditional vehicle is completely change the mechanical structure underneath the car. It would have to be able to pivot. You would have to have points that are able to do a full
I understand
90.
the complexity. I'm just wondering why nobody's ever tried to figure it out until now.
Well, it gets us back to some of the limitations of a in-wheel motor, and that's what I was going to cover this morning to a degree was the in-wheel motor, by the way, was invented first by Ferdinand Porsche, and that was in 1898. That's 126 years ago or something like that. The concerns about this technology were a number of things. One is that a fender bender now can result in a complete motor replacement. You're going to be damaging parts that are in harm's way during accidents. Another comment was, I have my reservation and investment in Aptera. Aptera, remember, is the company that is making a solar EV with panels on top, and it's a 3-wheeler.
Right.
And they are in-wheel motors. So that's a deviation from what we're seeing most of now. Another company, Lordstown Motors, is trying them, but unsuccessfully at this point, was the comment. There's another comment in that they used hub motors in a diesel hybrid electric autonomous ground vehicle for the military and found that to be unsuccessful. They have their place, he says, but passengers' cars for the highway where use and ride quality are concerned, he doesn't feel that that's going to be the case. And the concern there is you have an enormous amount of unsprung weight that is going to make the ride difficult with that much weight in the wheels or in the motors. Then another comment is the amount of beating that these motors will take when driving on bumpy roads. Somebody in the UK piped up. Somebody in New York piped up and said, it's not going to work with all our potholes. Remember back east, after winter, it really takes a toll on the roads, and lots of potholes during spring, and that's when they do a lot of the road repairs. And it's fundamentally water getting up underneath the asphalt and,
Yeah. Well,
buckling it.
not only that, in the wintertime, that water will turn to ice, get underneath the roadbed,
Right.
freeze, expand, and then you end up with buckles in the entire roadbed. In Alaska, they like to call them frost heaves.
Yeah.
Just all I can say is just try going down the highway at 55 miles an hour, and then you start to hit these frost heaves, and they're not like potholes; they're like launch ramps.
Oh, like speed bumps.
Oh, worse.
Yeah. Okay.
You won't see them. They'll be 18 inches tall, and you'll just come up on one, and you'll basically, if you're not watching, you will launch off of one and come back down in time to hit the next one. It breaks shocks, breaks axles.
Oh, man.
So you're going slower.
It's like skiing moguls, it sounds like.
And that's a great example. Yes.
If you're not prepared, you're going to hit that wrong or the next one at the wrong angle and go down. So anyway, I thought we'd share with you what Hyundai is working on. We're still convinced that this is the future. It just seems to be a far more efficient way to handle propulsion, but a lot of engineering challenges exist. And, eventually the drive mechanisms will continue to get smaller, more efficient, lighter, and we'll start getting rid of some of that massive amount of metal that's underneath cars to convert rotational energy to the
yes.
wheels.
To me, though, I wonder how fast I could get going around in circles before I'd throw up.
Yeah, good point.
All right, we are at 57 minutes.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we have any other final pictures here.
Yeah, you had one in there. It's called "Seems Legit." Do you remember?
Yeah,
that one?
let's pop that one up. And this one looks like somebody was attempting to use a EV only parking spot and got pretty creative. I mean, it seems legit is I think the right title for that picture. Looks like a Home Depot maybe, but
The best thing I could say is I do not think I'd want to touch the metal side of that flatbed.
It's
yeah.
a pottery barn, maybe.
There was a picture circulating the last week about 12 inches of water in a parking lot. And there were a couple of Teslas there charging in that lake, that mini lake.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
the caption was, "Would you charge at this location at this point in time?" The reality is they have gone to great lengths to minimize any kind of electrocution risks with these
Right.
charging stations. If that truly were a concern, I would be equally concerned in a heavy rain when you're opening your charge port door and you've got that connector in your hand. There are electronics in that process that won't turn anything on until you are out of the way.
Right.
So, but anyway, yeah. Well, next, or this week, Thursday, we have an author, and I wish I brought the book with me. I didn't do it, who is going to join us and talk about his book. You read it?
Yes, Ingemar Anderson is the author. I believe the title of the book is The Future of EVs, and it's going to be available for sale on Amazon May 1st.
The future is electric.
The Future is Electric. Thank you for correcting me, Jesse. Good book. It was a very fast read, but it was a lot of really good basic information for the person who is inquiring about electric vehicles, not really sure whether or not they would want to take the jump into that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it'll be an interesting session. We'll have the book, the author. You can ask questions, what motivated him to write it, what kind of content is in it, and why does he think you should buy it, basically.
By all means.
Tomorrow we have our Tesla Roadster podcast, and our guest last week was in Germany, and it didn't work out. So we're going to have him back on, and most likely during one of the morning podcasts, because we tend to forget that at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, it's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning for them in Germany. So we'll try to make the time a little bit more comfortable for him. We are also planning on having additional guests in these podcasts, so stay tuned. We'll announce ahead of time who we're going to have and when. And as always, we appreciate all of you joining us. We're having a good time doing this.
By all means. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining us this morning. We look forward to talking to you tomorrow afternoon at 4 and again Thursday at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time.
We'll see you then.